Have you ever dreamed of racing cars? Then go race. There are hundreds of thousands of people racing every weekend, throughout the year, all around the country. They're part of a huge community of people who live for high-performance driving. These folks make their way into a variety of driving sports by way of the thousands of driving clubs available to them. Choose your sport. From autocross to drifting, track days, high-performance driver education, time attack and time trials, club racing, and many more. The bigger sanctioning organizations have regional clubs in every state, like the Sports Car Club of America, for example. They've been the core force behind U.S. motorsports for 70 years and still going strong. Finding a regional club and joining is a simple affair. The best part, it's your cheapest way to start racing now. A few bucks, a decent sporting car, some light racing gear, and you're set to become part of this community of racers. Skill levels range from total novice to professional. The performance demands range from street speeds to full track speeds, such as Cup Challenge racing. Technically, this is all amateur racing, but these people have the hearts of pros, equally committed to their passion and goal. They don't race for money. They spend it to feed their mission. They're not pros only because they don't make a living racing. Otherwise, many of them are that good. This community has been dubbed with a name to distinguish it from the big leagues. This is Grassroots Racing. And this is Second Gear, where it all begins. If you're one of these people and you have ambitions of going pro, then you'll inevitably ask the big question at some point. What does it take, in actuality, to become a professional race car driver? The crew, along with Motorsports presenter Nate Pace, unanimously agreed that finding an answer to this question was worthy of making a movie. Answers to the big question would best come straight from real pro racers. Our mission then was to find us some racers and invite them to take us back to the beginning of their racing careers. World-class racing is truly epic, and the sport offers one of the biggest events in the U.S. For 61 years, Sebring International Raceway has been the home of the world-famous 12 Hours of Sebring endurance race. From 1998 to 2013, this historic, prestigious race has been the domain of the American Le Mans Series. The track is one of the toughest in the world, making this race one of the most challenging, and along with the prestige, it's one of the most anticipated and revered events by fans and drivers alike. In this world, we could surely find some of the world's most acclaimed drivers. Although we're here to find answers to the big question, this is also an opportunity for a behind-the-scenes look at the reality of this world, where you might aspire to arrive one day. This series evolved from the European Le Mans endurance racing. It features 5 classes from prototypes down to GT challenge cars. All 5 classes run at the same time, and this creates challenging dynamics for the drivers that are unique to multi-class racing. It's the morning of the big event, and pit row is bustling with activity as teams prepare for a 25-minute pre-race warm-up session. The warm-up is a last chance for drivers to review the course and confer with their teams about strategy. As engines are fired up and cars begin to roll out onto the track, the air comes alive. The sounds of the cars like trumpets calling all who can hear them to prepare for the great exhibition. To see so many people working so intensely, yet in cheerful spirits like people at play, is truly awe-inspiring. They live by indulging their passion. Their commitment is driven by profound adoration for the sport, for the sights and sounds, people, and for this way of life. Theirs is the spirit of racing, and today, it's wide awake. After the warm-up session, drivers return to their pit spots. Teams have about 30 minutes to use as they please before setting up in pre-grid. Everything in the cars and in the pits has to work perfectly for 12 hours, so a slew of last-minute checks are performed. Suspension and engine components are checked. Tires are checked for potential damage during the warm-up session. If needed, changed as rules permit. Some teams will practice driver change routine. This feat is a great challenge and has to be performed perfectly within the span of a pit stop.
2, 1, go!
This is more difficult during the race when there are crew, hoses, and tires flailing about the car, and adrenaline is coursing through the driver's veins. Computers and comm systems are given a final check. Losing them during the race can have catastrophic consequences. Fueling systems are a top safety concern, and they're thoroughly checked and tested. Some drivers discuss strategy with their teams, while others use this time to visualize the course and their in-car routines. As the morning schedule of events continues, the teams button up the cars, drivers get strapped in, race time is approaching. From here, they roll out onto the track for pre-grid and the pre-race festivities. Across from the pits is the front straightaway where pre-grid is set up. Teams line up their cars in order of qualifying in class. This is a collection of over $250 million of the most advanced racing technology in the world. They're referred to as cars, but in reality, they appear more like aerodynamic exosuits with sticky tires and Goliath horsepower. Expensive marvels built truly to be an extension of the driver's body, creating the feel of oneness between man and machine. The prototypes are the keystone of Le Mans racing design, a shape that originated in the early 1900s and has since evolved into these magnificent forms. They're the result of the advanced and forward-thinking nature of Le Mans racing, with Audi surely being a steadfast example of advancement and very fast forward-thinking. The track is opened up to the fans so they can get a chance to meet the drivers and their teams and behold these spectacular machines up close. The teams line up for the pre-race speeches and the national anthem. One can't help but be impressed by this regal sight. Like battalions of warriors clad in the colors of their teams, standing proudly by their mates and their gleaming steeds, only moments away from the battle cry. A ceremonial flyby graces the sky overhead. Military paratroopers make a heroic entry, marking the close of ceremonies and the start of the event. The anticipation has reached a fever pitch by now. Everyone is ready to hustle. It's time to race. Engines ignite and these fire-breathing beasts come to life. As they roll out for the grid lap, they're waved on by ALMS President Scott Atherton himself, luminous with pride, his passion radiating visibly. Like ferocious mythical beasts, they seem possessed with impatience, eager to unleash their rage. Biology and technology come together with raw power to create the amazement that is racing. These racers and these teams are the giants of competitive racing. When the green flag drops, the full fury of these awesome machines is unleashed. The air is saturated with the savage roar of combustion. The thunder of their approach is answered by the deafening roar of exhausts as they rocket past. Tires barely cling to the track as suspensions are assaulted by Sebring's gauntlet of challenging imperfections and mixed pavement. It's only the first turn, on cold tires, on a cold track, and already the limits are being tested. In only these first few hundred yards, the pace for this race has been set. 12 hours, 500 laps, and over 1,000 miles. This is how it'll be till the end. Behold the brutal horsepower that hurls men and machines through the boundary between earth and sky. Dreams don't compare to the reality. This is a vision realized only by a few, and one sought after by millions. Those who make it become part of a special world. To be a driver here is to no longer be dreaming the dream, but living it instead. Big racing events like this are usually a few days long. In the days before the race, walking through the paddock area, peering into every garage, is the thing to do. What we saw were people covering the gamut of race technology specialization, incessantly milling about their cars. These people are the engine of the team. Their one unified mission is to get their drivers across the finish line first. They're also every bit as dedicated to their passion for racing as any driver. As a pro driver, one has to be able to click with their team. At this level, solid character is as crucial as talent. This morning, the teams were preparing for a 45-minute practice session. We caught up with the cars, staging at the track entrance. The world's top manufacturers are represented here. For them, racing offers the best vehicle development laboratory. While they waited to get on the course, we got to savor the rarefied air. The practice sessions are critical for the performance of the driver and the car during the race. This is where the driver has to be able to clearly communicate to the team exactly what they're experiencing behind the wheel. Knowledge of chassis dynamics, mechanicals, and eloquence are more than half of what makes a driver really valuable. After a few laps, the cars return to the pits and they're hooked up to the computers in the pit box. An array of data points are downloaded. These tell the engineers how the car is performing and what the driver is doing. The team then has to correlate driver feedback to the data from the car's computers. If teams and drivers can't connect here, the game is over. As this practice session ended, we continued on with our great quest for the elusive answers to our perplexing question. There are nearly a dozen support races, as they're called, that take place during these long weekends. They can consist of a wide variety of challenge series, including historics, like we see here, Ferrari Challenge, the GT3 Cup Challenge, Prototype Lights, and even the Skip Barber Pro School Series, runs during this time. We took interest in the 3 aforementioned series because they represent the specific points on the career ladder at the bottom and at the top. The Skip Barber Pro School Series is first on the list for best place to start a career. For overall proper race education and development, attending the school and then racing in the Pro Series is the ideal inception into real racing. Running spec Mazda MX-5 Roadsters, this series is great fun, but it is more importantly a real eye-opening experience. Winning here is a huge step towards getting recognized for exceptional talent. Nearer the top of the ladder is the GT3 Challenge Series. The series runs Porsche GT3 spec race cars, which are the equivalent of the ALMS GTC class Porsches. Although this series is just one step down from Pro, essentially, it is still part of the Grassroots domain. The natural progression from this series is to ALMS GTC class, though drivers could end up in virtually any series and class, but not if they don't win consistently. Nate caught up with one driver who is currently running in the series on her climb to becoming a pro driver.
My name is Frieberg. I'm currently racing in the IMSA GT3 Challenge, and I'm racing for Effort Racing. I'm 21 years old and pursuing a professional career in the sports car world.
When did you first get into racing, and what was it that sent you towards it?
I grew up with 2 brothers, and I've always been a tomboy, playing basketball, soccer, you know, riding on skateboards and everything, so I was super competitive. And when they got into racing, like as a hobby, suddenly it got pretty serious, and I never really thought girls raced at first. I kind of thought it was like football, like, you know, just girls just didn't do it. But then I saw girls on the track, and I was like, hey, this is something I can do. And I was just 13 years old when I first got into a go-kart, and the second I sat in a go-kart, I was done. Like, this is what I want to do.
It was all over from that point, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome. So you started out in go-karts as well then. Is there another step you took between where you are now?
Yeah, I raced go-karts for 2 years, and most of all, I wanted to make sure that I'm taking each step the right way. So I was working on being, you know, the best I could be at each level. So once I started to win races and started to run up front in go-karts, that's when I moved up to cars. And I raced in the Skip Barber series, which is open wheel. And same thing there. 2010, I started to win a lot of races, won a couple championships. And then last year I moved up to the Star Mazda series. So basically my whole background's been open wheel racing. But last year I started to think about my future, and I was like, okay, where do I really want to be? And I really thought that the coming together of the 2 series between ALMS and Grand Am was a super exciting thing, and I just really wanted to be a part of it. And basically, I was introduced to this series, the GT3 Cup Series, and I thought it was a perfect fit for me, so that's how I ended up here.
Well, is there any bit of advice you'd give anybody trying to get into the sport to say, look, make sure you do this, or maybe you don't want to do that, things that you've learned along the way that you would want to share with somebody that didn't know trying to get in?
I think the biggest thing is that you're always a professional from day one. I mean, I can remember as soon as I got into Skip Barber, you know, I was dressing fully professional. Like, I wanted to be taken seriously at all times. Like, kids showing up at the track like in shorts and t-shirts, you know, it doesn't look like you're really serious about it. And I think that's what really makes you stand out as a driver, and to sponsors as well. It's like, okay, this kid's serious, like they really are in this and they're in it for the long run. So I think that was one of the bigger things that I learned when I was coming up.
Show your professionalism, show your commitment, show your enthusiasm for the sport from day one, completely professional, and that's going to help you stand out in the crowd from these other guys, like you said, right?
Absolutely.
We ran into a longtime Grassroots driver who just made the leap to pro from the GT3 Cup Challenge Series to the American Le Mans.
Hey, I'm Carlos Gomez from Bogota, Colombia. I did a little bit of touring cars 20 years ago. Then back in the States here, I started autocrossing, then racing PCA, NASA, all Grassroots, and made the step to IMSA GT3 Challenge 2 years ago. And now I race the 24 Hours of Daytona, and this is my first 12 Hours of Sebring.
For those drivers interested in prototypes, there's the IMSA Prototype Light Series. The logical progression to Pro from here is a seat in the Le Mans Prototype Challenge car. The series is the equivalent of what Indy Lights is to IndyCar. These are serious race cars, and the competition is fierce. This is by no means an easy series. Generally, the series tends to be populated by a lot of young guns, but Prototype Lights is ideal for any age driver. We spoke to one rookie driver who was a very successful IMSA Lights racer, making his debut as a pro in the ALMS LMPC class. He's also the youngest pro driver in the American Le Mans series at just 17 years old.
You got into this sport fairly recently, right?
Yeah, it was about 5 years ago. I started late compared to most kids that start in karting when they were like 8 or 6. So I started when I was 12, so got a pretty late start, but moved up pretty quickly.
But what was it that made you want to race in the first place? Did you grow up around cars? Was your father into racing? Did you just really, was it something that caught you at a young age? You're like, I just like cars, and now that I've gotten a chance to go out and play in the go-karts, now I want to actually race them, and I really love it, or what was it?
That's a funny story, because my dad's a professional tennis coach. And I have a twin brother who's going up the ranks in tennis. So my first sport, before I ever even thought about running a go-kart or moving into cars, was tennis. I was a nationally ranked tennis player. I mean, it all started with that. I mean, I always enjoyed watching races with my dad because he's a big race fan. But then one day I just felt like I didn't have the passion for tennis anymore. And I just found racing somehow, somewhere. It just ended up in a kart and moved up the ranks. So
you know what I love about that story? Is never once did you say, I think I can make more money in racing than I can in tennis. That wasn't the drive, right? You played tennis, you enjoyed it, and you went after racing because it was a sport you enjoyed.
Yeah, I just enjoy racing. Every time I get in the car, I get those butterflies. And it just strives me to go faster every little inch. And I mean, I love it. That's the only thing I can say. There's no words to describe it.
There's nothing better than being able to do what you love every day for a living.
Exactly.
So
that's why I didn't have that in tennis. And then when I found racing, I won my first race. I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Your lead over there has a great deal amount of confidence in you. They came and found you. I heard you guys were even having a little bit of trouble with the cart when they actually came and found you.
Yeah, it was at the Super Nationals in Vegas. It was a big go-kart race, and I mean, I didn't have nearly the amount of like factory carts that most of the kids have there, so I was kind of struggling. But put on a good show. I put on the best show I could put on. But they found me, and they had their IMSA Lights car over there. So the team owner Brent found me sitting in the car, just chilling in there, and I told him I'm going to drive this car one day. And sure enough, next year I was in their car testing at Palm Beach, and the year after we won the championship. So it's been really short, and I didn't think I'd be here this soon. So it's quite a shock for me.
Is it that caught your eyes as an owner to say, hey, look, I want to bring this guy on board? What stuck out with him above everybody else that was out there competing?
You know, we were in Vegas actually at Super Nationals, a go-kart race.
Okay.
And there's probably 500 or 600 kids there racing in that.
Yes, it's a large crowd.
Huge crowd. And I was just sitting in the stands watching some of the heats, and I watched this kid. Actually, we were there to watch another kid, and we're there watching. And we see this kid, Tristan Nunez, didn't have the best kart, didn't have the best motor, never crashed once, never put a wheel wrong, made passes, not hitting anybody. And I said, you know, that kid's really impressive. He's really mature for his age, driving. And so we snooped around a little bit for the couple of days that we were there, and actually met him. And I had one of the DPO2s. We were on our way to California, and all of a sudden this kid's sitting in our car, and it was Tristan. And he lives in Boca Raton. Our shop is based in Hollywood, Florida. And I said, hey, anytime you want to do a test with us, I'll be glad to test you. The kid is really good.
Right, it's going to go back to...
It's going to go back.
Like
This car will
So like
push
when
pretty
you're
bad.
on the brake, so you get off, and when you turn, that's when you come off the brake, right?
Yes. Yeah, when you're turning, get off the brake.
Yeah.
Yes. Squeeze off the brake.
So that's,
Yeah.
that's the old string between the steering
Exactly.
wheel. Yeah, the Jackie Stewart thing,
Yeah.
right? So.
And I do it even more, like I said, even one that. When I have this much lock on, there's no brake. For me, in that corner. Okay. But I also, so there's a little bit of missing the apex, but it's also, you can miss it faster if you also try to just go a little bit back on power.
Yeah.
As soon as you touch it, just 5%, it's going to push.
So far, we've seen what the top of the mountain looks like. We have contemplated some of what it takes to get here. But we've come to petition those that live at the top of the mountain to tell us their stories. What was their climb like? What wisdom can they impart from their experience on those pursuing this life and how to acquire it? What follows might not be what you expect to hear, after which you'll either forfeit the idea of a pro career or you're going to want it more than ever before.
My name's Justin Bell, and actually I've raced here at Sebring quite a long time. My dad, I think, won it only once or twice. I never did. I finished second here, I think, with Viper back in the day, so it's kind of cool to see them back. Now I really am a TV host, and that's pretty much all I do, as well as racing a bit and driving fun cars.
What got you into racing in the first place?
I was pretty fortunate that my dad was a driver. It was only when I was about 14 did I realize it was quite special. I didn't have a burning desire to do it. I raced motorbikes, and then when I was 17 I just had my first sit in the Formula Ford, and I worked out that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know how fortunate it was to have my dad being in the business. And I mean, I've spoken to other people whose kids are like actors and musicians.
Right.
You know, and they're like, oh, if you spend your whole time on set or at a gig, you think that's what everyone does.
What made you able to make the leap from amateur driving into pro driving?
I think it's a dilemma facing all sports right now, in the fact that, like, when my dad's generation started, you genuinely started because all you wanted to do was drive racing cars. You didn't know there was a commercial angle to it.
Right.
You didn't know there was ever going to be a way of making money. You didn't know it was a career. You just knew it was something you wanted to do. But now, of course, no kid or parents push them to get started in anything without knowing 100% that you hear of the basketball players on, 20-year-olds on $100 million contracts, or racing drivers.
Everybody's chasing the monetary value, right?
Everyone's chasing it. So I think it's kind of in somewhat warped the original purity of wanting to do the sport. And it's had this knockdown effect that it becomes very expensive to start. I don't know how anyone actually starts in the sport. For me, it was still, my first couple of seasons cost a few, couple of tens of £1,000s. But now it's
even more.
Now to do go-karting, 70 grand to be competitive as a 10-year-old. I mean, so the sacrifices of the parents have to be enormous, or you have to be rich, or you have to be in the 0.0001%, like a Raikkonen or someone like that, or Sebastian Loeb in rallying, who are literally that much better than anyone else, that their talent will shine through. Very few people are starting out for it to be their hobby these days.
Right.
They're starting out with it to become a pro racing driver. So they're already setting their course.
It's an investment already, right from the beginning.
Yeah. Football, I always compare the pyramids, if you look in football or baseball in America, the pyramid's probably like that, because there's, 10,000 kids trying to get through, 100,000 kids. Racing is a pyramid like this.
Less people, yeah.
Fighting less people, but money and talent, and but remember, good old-fashioned communication. You got to be likable. You can't be a dick. For the young people, they live in such a digital age. We're young also, but they live in such a remote digital age that they think just flicking someone an email, and if they don't get a response back, then it means the person doesn't want them. Right,
You
go and see them.
personal.
More personal. You got to have a point of difference. I mean, if you were, if you could be, it's very hard to stand out. But you've got to be quick.
Right.
But you've got to be really good at being you. And I think it's really tough. Like, who am I to say that someone shouldn't pursue their dream? If you want to be a racing driver, then the most important thing from my point of view is that you should get yourself connected with the best teams you can. Get on the radar of a Chip Ganassi or someone. Just write to Miklitsch and say, Chip, look out for me in 4 years' time.
I want to go racing.
I want to go racing. That's what you need to do.
Well, and me, you've had quite an extensive career. Everything from starting out in motorsports, going into television, and now within the last 2 years, back with the SRT team. And I believe that was when they made their return as well, right?
Yes, it's been 15 years really since I considered myself a pro, and in that time I do a lot of the TV stuff and various things, took some time off, and then when this program came along and literally fell in my lap, we did 4 races last year, return of the Viper GTSR, in anticipation of the launch of the production car, which is just hitting the road right now. Very cool. It's got to feel just like when you first started, I would imagine now. After the break to come back, is that level of excitement and enthusiasm again? Yeah, it's different. It's, I mean, in a way, I mean, I appreciate it even more being away from it, but it really was very similar. And it was also similar in that I had to relearn certain things and get sharp again in a lot of ways as well. Do you have any suggestions for these guys on how they could go in and get involved in racing? Maybe not at the top tier level right away. We all have to start somewhere. What would be a good opportunity, a good path to take from there? I mean, go-karting's far and away the best. I mean, the cost per mile is the lowest there is, really. And it's really excellent experience. And it's not a coincidence that 90% of the top guys in the world started out in go-karts. So, you know, it's not insignificant cost, but if that's all you can think about, you'll figure out a way to raise the money, and you don't have to have the top of the line at first. I mean, it's reps. You know, there's a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and he looks at all different things, and you know, he says the magic number is 10,000 hours of something to master it. And so, you know, I think reading the books and reading up on the technique and some of that, I think counts as the hours. You just, and you need to not lose sight. Everybody's so hell-bent on trying to get to the pro level. I had as much fun as I've ever had in racing the first year I ever raced in the Jim Russell Pro Series, or School Series. And I've had a lot of fun since, and I've actually made money, and I've driven some sexy cars and gone to some sexier places. But I don't know if it was more fun than that year, where we slept on the floor, we flagged corners when we weren't in the car to make the races happen. So, I mean, it is an expensive sport, but you just got to do everything you can do, and some people never get the shot, but you got to be ready when the shot comes. So getting in shape, pestering people to learn about the business, figuring out how to raise money, and getting as many laps as you can, and whatever it is the way to go.
Nothing against Ferrari, but I'm a Honda guy.
Right out of high school, I was a mechanic. I worked on BMWs for 12 years, and that gave me the money to actually race karts at a higher level and get the recognition and sponsorship to go win championships there. So number one, you know, you need to be winning. Karting is the place to start, in my opinion. That's where you want to start, and you need to be winning races there, because everything you learn in karting totally applies to what we're doing here. The racecraft, you know, even some of the setup skills that you have. I've seen racing change quite a bit over the years. I was very much a grassroots guy. I was my own mechanic. Even in the early days of car racing, I worked on my own race cars. But what drives it more than anything is just a passion. And you know, I look back on some of the things that I did, Nate, and they're just crazy. The all-nighters that I pulled, you know, driving across country. When I say cross country, I'm talking about from Atlanta to Long Beach, California, you know, things like that. And, you know, the sleepless nights, but money was one of the motivating things, because when I broke into professional racing, I had to support a wife and 2 kids, and my wife didn't work, and everything that I earned from racing is what we used to pay the bills. So my advice to people is, if you want something bad enough, make it happen. You know, if you have a passion like I do, just try to make it happen. And it really separates, I hate to say the men from the boys, or the girls from the women, or whatever, but it really separates people. You know, if you want something bad enough, go out there and work hard for it. I'm living proof that it can happen. It wasn't from a financial background, and you know, I'll be 50 this year, and I'm very lucky to still be in this.
You guys all have varied backgrounds in racing. You want to tell a little bit about how you got into it? How old were you, and what do you think the push was that made the big difference to go from amateur to pro?
Well, I started relatively late in life. I was about 42 years old, and no intention of starting racing, but decided to take my son to a racing school to teach him how to drive. And I got hooked, and a few years later, here I am at Michael Shank Racing, racing a Daytona prototype in the Rolex series.
Excellent. So you don't have to be 15 in a go-kart to make your start. You can get in as years go by a little bit.
No, it helps, but it just takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and determination. I think anybody can do it with the right kind of attitude.
Now, you have a different kind of history. You started out in racing, correct, and then moved into now owning the actual team.
Yeah, I mean, mine started from working on and driving my own race cars and just loving racing and trying to figure out a way I can make a living at it. And I think that's the most important thing to remember. When you're looking at racing, sometimes you might not be able to get exactly where you want to be. We all want to drive F1 cars. The realistic world is that's probably not possible. So it's about being in, putting yourself in a position where people like me see and hear your name over the PA systems, magazines and television shows. I want to hear about you. If you're good enough, I'll start hearing about you, and then I'll start paying attention. The most important thing is to put yourself in a position that you can win races, because you will be talked about then. If you don't do that, if you try to run third, fourth, or fifth, and you're extending yourself to even do that, go back to a series where you can dominate so that I learn about you or someone else learns about you. It's always about making sure you're known to me. Otherwise, I'll never hear about it. So start in the street stock categories and dominate it, and then work your way up from there.
It's a little bit easier, I would imagine, at the lower classes too, financially. If you're trying to get into racing, the higher the class you go, the more expensive it is. So if you're working on a budget trying to get into the business, then trying to go all out and get into the fastest car you possibly can might not be the fastest car for the track, and then it gets you buried, right?
It's the worst thing you can do. If you have $80,000, it would be better to run a full season of Miata Cup, say, and dominate it, than take an $80,000 and try to do a GS effort and run mid-pack or worse. You want to be where you can star and you can shine. Don't hinder yourself already. Take the money you do have and put it in the smartest place. And that's what people don't do right. They don't analyze where they need to be seen by people like me. So they got to get to where I can pay attention to them and dominate them. Not just P2, 3, 4, 5. They got to win, and win a lot.
Well, there you go. That's real truth for you right there. Not, oh yeah, don't worry, you'll make it, but you need to do the right things and make the right decisions to get there. When do you think you made your transition from amateur to pro, and what do you think it was that helped you make that jump for you personally?
I mean, when obviously I went from Brazil to England, and racing over there, you kind of learn quite a bit. Came down here, and when I came here to the States and started racing Indy Lights, trying to get it to IndyCar, that was the turning point, I would say. But I also got to a point where I couldn't go any further, and then I was lucky enough to meet those guys, and win the Rolex 24 a year ago, and just win races and enjoy life and live the dream.
You're the owner and a driver. What's it like doing both here?
Well, it's a little harried. When we first, Patrón came to me and gave me the opportunity to start ESM, everyone said, oh, you're never going to be able to do both. And I grew up around that. My dad had his own racing team and raced. Eventually came to the point when he retired from driving and just owning the team. But I always came from the mentality that you can do that. And so for me, it's been great. Number one, obviously, you got to have great people. I think we've got some of the best in the world. I think we can go to any racing discipline and be successful, given enough time, preparation, and testing. So the people are integral to that. And so I hand it over to those guys, and during the week I'm worried maybe about logistics or budgeting or those kind of things, but when we get to the racetrack, I pretty much just focus on being the driver.
So you yourself have a wide range of experience, right, through many different series?
I've been very blessed. Yeah, I've run a lot of different series and had a lot of fun. I had great sponsors behind me, so it's sort of come full circle for me, though. I started in road racing. I started actually coming to Sebring at a real early age, and now to be back here again with my own team and be running prototypes, it's really exciting.
What would be your advice to these people, how to get into the sport?
That's one thing that's so tough, the entry level, entry barriers to entry and the high costs. But I always tell everybody, just never give up. If that's really your passion, drive anything. Because you need experience, especially every step of the way. Even guys that are on the cusp of making it professionally in ALMS or Grand Am or what have you, and they're maybe just one step down. What's all the team owners looking at them for? Experience, experience, experience. And if you're a young guy just starting out, same thing. People want to see, even if it's crazy endurance races you've done or one-off little sprints, or if some guy gives you a chance to go drive an oval track car, drive it. And somehow, if you do well and you showcase yourself well, other people are going to see, other people are going to talk to you, talk about you, and that's going to turn into even more opportunities.
Is there something you look for specifically in your drivers that sets them apart? Something that says, this is why I choose these guys?
Well, I think ultimately, you only have a couple spots to fill, so you really got to pick the right guys. Obviously, you want pace. You want a guy who's quick, but there's so much more to it than just that. I mean, this is one team. This isn't about me and all the pole positions and wins I'm going to get, or the next guy. It's ESM as a whole. And I think endurance racing is more of a team aspect of a sport. You know, you've got to share the seat with the same guy. You got to share the car setup with the same guy. You got to turn the car over in a long race in good condition. You can't just go wear it out. So it very much is a team sport. Every guy in this team plays an integral role. So for me, you want someone who's professional, someone who understands that team concept, and someone who's very proficient technically and help the effort move forward.
Look down, just look down, grab it, fish it, fall into the seat. That's slow. Boom, spot it.
Well, you've had quite a journey on your way up through motorsports. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I have. It has not been the expected ladder climb that most people, families, kids think about as they're getting prepared to start on this journey of professional auto racing. I raced go-karts as a young kid and was very enthusiastic about my racing, but really didn't have a plan. I didn't have a family that knew anything about racing, wasn't into racing at all, but they were behind me and helping me get to the go-kart track. That's really all we knew. I played a lot of sports as a kid, and soccer was one of them. I played it forever. I played it for 10 or 12 years. And as I got really serious about my go-kart racing, I stopped doing anything else. While everything just kind of was put on hold. And the last thing that I quit was soccer. And when my soccer coach asked me why I was stopping, I told him that I wanted to be a race car driver and that I'm racing go-karts now, and this is taking up all my time. He used to work on a race team and still knew somebody on Long Island, in Northport, where I grew up, that owned a car dealership and an exotic car repair shop, that the owner was himself a race car driver and getting prepared to retire. And I got an opportunity through Pete Matson to meet a gentleman by the name of Walter Simmendinger, and we had dinner at the Ground Round, local little restaurant where we all go. We all lived about a mile from each other, but had never met. And he agreed to give me 3 races in his car, and it was just SCCA regional racing and EMRA, the Eastern Motor Racing Association. Just real grassroots, beginning, entry-level racing that I was able to come out of go-karts and get put into that and have my first real shot, have my first real sponsor. We wouldn't have been able to do it, my family been able to do it if it wasn't for that. And Walter and Pete mentored me, a kid that I had a lot of drive and a lot of aspiration and trying to focus what talent I had on my racing, but I didn't have a direction. And that's what these guys gave me, and that was a really good deal.
Right.
So
I have a plan. I know where I want to be. I'm following the path of the right racing series to get there. Is there anything personally as a driver you can do to try and make yourself stand out from all the other very talented people that are out there?
The toughest thing that I ever had to do as a driver was not drive. It was sell myself and get to know people. And it is an extremely humbling experience. Understand, this is not an easy thing to do, but every guy that's successful in this sport and that has done this has had to go through this. And it is such it's such an easy process, but it is so hard to get yourself to do, to walk up to somebody with your business card and your shirt tucked in and your khakis and everything you don't like to wear normally on a day-to-day basis, and introduce yourself to a team owner and say, "Hi, I'm Andy Lally. I'm trying to be a race car driver. Here's my card, here's my bio, here it is. I know you don't have a lot of time. I just wanted to introduce myself." And then get the heck out of there, because most of the time they don't want to hear from you, they don't want to see you, they're going to duck you the next time they come by, they're hard to get in touch with in the first place, so it's humbling. You're going to some place where a lot of times the guys don't want to see you. They don't have time because you've gone there on a race weekend to touch base with everybody, and they're busy. We're racing. We've got a lot of stuff to do. We're tearing apart race cars, we're having sponsorship meetings, whatnot. Do it anyway, because if you don't, the next kid's gonna. And at some point in the years that I did this, I used to the Kevin Dorans and the Alex Jobs and the people that were around back in the day, where I would go in year out and introduce myself, eventually remembered me. Yes, you have to do things outside of just introducing yourself, and you have to, when you get your shot on the track, be good enough. And at some point they read your name in the paper, they'll go, "Oh, it's the kid that bothers me at Daytona every year. It's the kid that comes to Sebring and interrupts me in the middle of my meetings." But it's humbling and it's horrible and it's embarrassing sometimes, but you got to do it. You have to do it. You have to spend the time to do this. You have to want it so bad that you're willing to go out and humiliate yourself and humble yourself to go do that. And it's probably not going to lead to a ride right now, but it's going to lead to them remembering who you are. And that's really all you can ask for.
Now, Patrick, you've been into racing for quite a while, but you also have quite an extensive acting career. What is it that gave you the drive to head towards racing?
Oh, I've always loved racing since I was a little kid. My father was very much into racing. You know, we'd watch the 500, of course, and when he could get an F1 race on television, we'd watch that, and certainly the Daytona 500. So it started then as a kid with my father, and then, you know, when I got older, you know, everybody wants to go racing. Everybody dreams of being a race car driver at some point or another. And then I just got started through, my wife gave me a Christmas present of a Skip Barber 3-day competition certificate, and that sort of started it. And then went to the Panos Racing School after that. I did their racing school advanced days, and then did their series, and then went on to the Coney, which is now Continental, and then just started getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it.
Excellent. So the racing school is basically where you got your start. It's a good suggestion for people looking to get into it.
The best way to get started is not just doing track days, but go work with some professional drivers, getting the technique, getting the foundation. And there are so many wonderful ladder programs for young drivers, or even older drivers for that matter. Go-karting is a great, inexpensive way to go racing, gives you great car control. I mean, you look at a lot of these guys, Scott Sharp, all those guys started in go-karts and worked their way up. And do the school route. I think that's the best way to do it. It's the cheapest and the smartest way to go racing.
Passion, commitment, faith, talent, lots of action, schools and ladder programs, race with the clubs and win. But also develop character and showmanship, instill the right mindset, and get some training in business and marketing. These are just the foundations of what it takes to become a professional race car driver. Back on race day, the battle on the track continues. The track has been baking in the sun and is now hot. Conditions have changed dramatically compared to the morning. More heat means more grip, and the tire management becomes critical. Drivers have to have incredible feel to detect subtle changes in handling and engine performance. They have to be able to balance their technique between slow-speed mechanical grip and high-speed downforce generated grip. They have to withstand torturous heat and noise for a half a dozen 2-hour stints. Being a pro driver is not just about pressing down on the gas and turning the wheel where the corners are. Finesse, grace, serenity, focus, stamina. Without these, one can quickly become part of the trackside advertising. As the hours count down, the track continues to change, and drivers have to change with it. These are not 500 laps of the same thing. These are 500 different laps. The caution flags fly. Endurance racing is extreme, and that means crashes and mechanical failures are inevitable. In this case, 2 teams experienced transmission failures at about the same time. One of the TRG Porsches lost the transmission and now scrambles to replace it. If it can be fixed, it has to be done within the time limit. If they can make it, they can rejoin the race. Amazingly, the failed transmission is out of the car in just 20 minutes and the new one already being fitted. The Extreme Speed Motorsports 01 car was taken out when the input shaft developed a split personality. Repairing it means taking this prototype apart. The entire rear portion of the car has to be removed to get to the transmission and replace the input shaft. Everyone works at a furious pace. Again, to our amazement, the team has the chassis split in 2 in just 30 minutes. At times, seemingly, people are in 2 places at once. As they work, the battle on the track continues unabated. No one slows to wait for the stricken teams to return. time is of the essence. With the problem sorted, the ESM team pieces the O1 car back together again. An endless stream of parts and pieces all go back where they belong perfectly. The team's commitment is unmistakable. As daunting a task as this is, the team makes it look easy. Roughly 1 hour later, the black and green Patrón Honda is on the ground and breathing fire once again. Back on the course, it's running like nothing ever happened. Now good as new, it'll stay together until the end of the race. TRG also gets their car back in action, about the same time. Times like these prove how critical it is for teams to have really good people. A win may be impossible now, but at the very least, these cars can still score valuable points for the teams. The night rapidly takes over the sky. Endurance racing presents the relatively rare opportunity to experience driving in the dark. Sebring has a very tricky layout, and drivers really have to know the track just to stay on course during the day. The few landmarks there are tend to vanish in the darkness, forcing drivers to rely heavily on memory rather than sight. In the darkness, a moment of confusion can turn into a disaster very quickly. With 2/3 of the race completed, we check out what life in the pits is like after 8 hours of racing. Say you are one of the many who have come to terms with the reality that though you have mad skills, you will never be Michael Schumacher. Still, you love the sport so much that you want a career in it, of some sort. Becoming one of the many support people is another way to get into the pro racing world. From being the team's gopher to being a crew chief, there are a lot of different positions to fill. As with drivers, at first, you may have to make some sacrifices to prove yourself before you get hired for a paycheck. The requirements are the same as that of the drivers: absolute commitment and dedication and real skills. Racing is fun, of course, but at this level, it's very serious. The danger is extreme, and it only takes a momentary lapse in judgment for bad things to happen. The pit stop is a good place to see why this is so. The choreography has to come together precisely, and only the fuel guys can touch the car. Tires come after, and only the tire guys can touch the car. All the while, the drivers are changing out. One wrong move could result in time lost, a penalty, or a major incident. With only 1 hour left of racing, when the 55 BMW pits, the team chooses not to change tires. They only top off the fuel tanks and swap drivers. Without the tire change and only partial fuel fill, this pit stop is cut way short. The drivers have only half the time to make their change, and sometimes it just doesn't quite go smoothly. The team ends up waiting for the drivers, but lucky for them, it wasn't critical this time. Pit stops in endurance racing are arranged as they are for safety more than saving seconds, like in shorter GT and Formula 1 races. Watching Audi's pit stop is just cool. The crew is swift and smooth. The pace that they work at leaves no room for error. One has to know their task, do it fast, and do it perfectly. As the hybrid beast leaves the pits, the saying comes to mind, dogs that don't bark, bite. The e-trons are the epitome of that cliché. Tire performance is crucial in endurance racing. driver feedback is as important as studying the tires themselves.
But there was no build-up. I don't want pickup, especially from now to the end, it's going to get worse. Pickup's going to be awful the rest of the night. It's just going to be something to fight. I'll try and keep the pressures up. And the higher pressure will help build temp, which will help shed the pickup. It'll help.
Conversations like this are commonplace. Tire manufacturers send engineers to assist teams. They inspect hundreds of tires and log information that's used for future developments.
It's late! That's my bedtime! I go to sleep!
Fatigue is a major factor in endurance racing. Everyone has their own way of dealing with it. Pit crews have long periods of waiting interrupted by short bursts of intense activity, and this is very hard on the body and mind. Teams make whatever provisions necessary to keep the crews going strong, not excluding a good massage if that's what it takes. Manning the computers, displays, communication systems is a continuous affair. As long as there is a car on the track, someone must be at the helm at all times. The end of the race is quickly approaching, and there's a strange peacefulness in the pits, even amidst the sounds of the exhausts roaring by without pause. The end is close enough that teams, with at least one car in the race, know they will reach the end. They will be adding one more of the world's greatest competitions into their logbooks. Note that teams will be satisfied logging a finish, not even a win. The trophies may be the glamorous prize, and the podium a moment of glory. But the real victory in endurance racing is simply reaching the checkered flag. More than 1,000 miles at full throttle, over a dozen driver changes, a few hundred gallons of fuel burned, some blood, and a lot of sweat. This is the ultimate test of mechanical prowess and human devotion. When the start-finish line is crossed for the final time, the moment of elation has come for those who made it to the end. Those who did not will have much work to do. And for those who won, this is the pinnacle moment that makes professional racing so attractive to so many. 7 billion people on Earth, and tonight, they, and only they, are the ones for whom this glorious moment is for. Their years of climbing the ladder, struggling and doing whatever they had to do to pursue their dream, all suddenly come together. They are a rare few who get to do what they love and be loved for doing it so well. They aren't celebrating winning a race. They're celebrating their dreams having come true. They're celebrating in gratitude for living the best life there is, the racer's life. So ask yourself, do you think you have what it takes to be a professional race car driver?
Patrón, I would put my bio with my phone number in the bathroom wall and have them ask him to tear off the number and call me. Totally unsuccessful.
Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Nate. Well, I was born at a very early age, and you know, I've been motor racing since about 17.
Passion is the key. You gotta have passion for what you're doing. Without passion, you're gonna be nowhere.
You know, I can't even close on that. You said it all right there.
All right, hey, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and marry a billionaire Brazilian chick. Something like that.